This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.
Hi, Andrew Austin here, and welcome to Austin On Air, right here on Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. My guest today is Napier City Councillor Api Tapine. Kia ora, Api, and thanks for coming to the show.
Ngā mihi, Andrew. Thank you for the invite.
No, it's good to see you, and congratulations on your re-election for a second term as a Napier City Councillor in the Nelson Park ward. Were you always confident that you will be one of the 4 councillors elected for that ward?
No, never confident. Not last term, not this term, but I'm grateful and still humbled by the choice of the city. They see a role for me to serve, and I'm glad to serve.
Excellent. And what do you think you learned from your first term as a councillor that will help you in the second term?
I think the greatest lesson that I learnt from the first term was that it makes a huge difference when you've got a driver at the bus. So it's encouraging to see our new Mayor-elect Councillor Wise already initiating her controls and safety checks on the bus as the driver.
Yeah.
But we... I would say that we didn't have a driver at the bus for the full trip during the last 3 terms. And
you're referring to Bill's illness. I hope he's doing well. Yes. Yeah,
he's recovering well, and they've still got a long recovery to go.
Yeah.
They are enjoying being out of the public limelight, so they can just be Bill and Shirley. So I wish them all the best for that journey as they rediscover life with those sorts of restrictions.
Yeah.
But outside of that, Bill had a very different focus as mayor. And I'm looking forward to see what type of leadership Kirsten shows to us as a team. She's been doing it for the last 3 years, but I'm looking forward to seeing her do it from the driver's seat.
Yeah. Now, your election last term made history because you were the first Māori councillor elected, and now you've been joined by Sally Crown, who becomes the second Māori councillor. How important is this for the city of Napier?
Well, I think the very first thing is that I was confident that despite the skills I offered to the city, I wasn't going to make it to the table in the last round. People with huge reputations and standing in Te Mātua Mau here in Napier and Hastings, such as Heitia Hiha, may he rest in peace, Jim Moronga. These are people who have built some amazing changes at a community level within Napier. They stood for council. They never made it across the bar. And they're people I respect. So when I was asked to stand, I was confident that not having the same mana as these 2 gentlemen and others, I was confident I wouldn't make the bar. But I was humbled by the fact that the city of Napier saw things in me that perhaps I didn't see myself. So,
and do you think it was a timing that maybe the city was ready for more diversity, or what do you think it was?
I think as a population and as a country, we are starting to mature and be a little bit more easy around who we are as a nation.
Yeah.
Less critical and less divisional in the way we're doing. There's still an element that like where they sit and don't want to move in their ideals. But overall, as a population, I think we're maturing and accepting diversity and seeing the value that diversity can bring.
So what are your priorities going forward into this new term, and what is it that you believe you've been elected to achieve?
Well, from my constituents and my ward point of view, the message was very clear. I had been listening the first 3 years, and I was on the right side of the votes as far as my constituents were concerned. They've made it very clear what their position is on the Prebinson Drive pool site versus the Onekawa pool site, so it was good to know that my position of supporting the Onekawa pool is the position of Napier. Until that changes, that's my position.
Yeah.
We have some major projects coming up, such as the aquarium. We really need to be having some serious conversations around the changes at an environmental level, climate change, not just declaring an environmental emergency, but actually following that up with some real sustainable conversations, as well as how we're going to resource our population to make that transition. Because we are talking about new problems for our population, which is going to require some new solutions.
Okay, well, we'll touch on some of those things as we go on, especially the pool situation. But just what were some of your personal successes, do you think, last term as a councillor?
Well, as the ward councillor for Nelson Park Ward, both Maxine Bogue and I were very pleased to be able to secure $2 million in the budget for Maraenui, which is now being used as a launching pad for the Activate Maraenui program. So I'm watching that with interest. And clearly the ward system, returning the ward system to Napier, historically that had the best return on voter turnout, voter engagement and people participating in the democracy at a community and local level. That's what the stats told us. That's what our history taught us. So we're really pleased to be, Maxine and I, to be behind pushing that particular agenda at the table. And now we have for Nelson Park, we have 4 councillors at the table who are connected to the community in a variety of different ways. We're all very different people, but we're all very focused on building Napier, but with a focus of the Nelson Park, of course. So that'll be great.
Yeah, no, it will be. It's interesting that change, because you used to have councillors at large and sort of not really responsible for a ward, as you said. Just tell us a little bit more about Activate Maraenui.
So, for a number of years, little things that I've become aware of, like since 1985, there have been petitions from the community in Maraenui and Marua around safety, basic things like street lighting, pruning trees, so people can walk to and fro at night without worrying about who's lurking in the shadows. So while that's been a bit slow in coming, there have been some scheduled works done by the Chief Executive and the staff which are starting to roll out now. So we're seeing trees being removed, trimmed, and we're seeing new lights being put in that area, which doesn't seem like a heck of a lot when you're driving past, but when you live in a community that's constantly shrouded in darkness, light makes a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see those sorts of things going. But as a result of the $2 million that we were able to secure in the LTP, that's given our staff an opportunity to have a good financial base upon which to really drive some change in the suburb. So they're hoping to build a variety of community-led facilities and solutions which are designed around providing more open spaces for the community to be able to be a community.
Yeah.
At the moment, the white picket fence mentality of your quarter acre section is what really is dividing us as a community. We don't walk outside our gate and meet our neighbour. Yeah. We only complain about them. And some of us have good reason to. But until we change the way we design our cities and we change the way we design how we provide spaces for our city to linger and hang around, we're not going to deal with some of those deep core issues around how do we build resilience and connection within a community. So Activate Maraenui is around building and enhancing the CBD and the green area around the shops at Maraenui, potentially putting in a community centre, and just creating a space that's designed to be, I guess, the lounge of the suburb. The eastern districts don't have the same amount of green space as some of the others.
Yeah.
So there are less spaces to linger and there are less spaces to just hang out as family and relax with community. So the Activate Maraenui program gives Napier City Council an opportunity to leverage some significant change within the suburb itself. We won't have to pay for it all ourselves. It does piggyback on a lot of the localism and a lot of the drive and the well-beings that are coming from central government. But ultimately the idea is to build a space where a community can reconnect, and by so doing, hopefully we'll deal with some of the deep-seated community issues.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll get on to some of those later, but you were talking about Kirsten Wise, the new mayor, and her difference in style to Bill Dalton, and she's nominated Annette Brosnan as her deputy mayor. Now, the council in the beginning had a sort of aura of unity, but towards the end it was quite fractured. I think you would agree with that. How do you think it's going to be going forward?
Well, already our new mayor has come out very differently to how Bill led the team after the amalgamation. It was a very different environment for Bill. I guess to Kirsten's advantage, she has been sitting in that same environment and showing leadership during the last 3 years. And she's had 3 years to determine how she might lead a council in a time of peace, I guess, in a time of prosperity. There's no contentious issues other than the big spends, which are bringing Napier together. So there's no big amalgamation issue, for example. So that gives the Mayor an opportunity to reinforce her connections with the community and drive a new space for the city. What I'm encouraged by is that she's come out before her appointment and since her appointment very strong in these areas, building collaboration amongst her councillors, carefully navigating the environment between governance and management, which, given the last 3 months of media attention, is probably a prudent move.
Yeah.
We want to try and retain all our key staff, and we want to move forward together. But we recognise that a change in leadership means a change in principles, and some people might not align themselves to those principles, and we might see a turnover. But ultimately, we've spent, the city has spent, and Chief Executive Wayne Jack has spent quite a bit of money building a good team, and he has got a good team. And I'd like to see that team be given the focus they need to be able to achieve their tasks on our behalf.
Yeah, because there is an inquiry into council staff going through Facebook pages of councillors at the request, apparently, of the council CEO. And you were one of those councillors whose Facebook page was looked at. If the Wellington lawyer who's conducting this inquiry finds this should not have happened, what would you expect to happen?
Well, I trust that my interpretation of those actions and the call for an independent review, I trust that they will find the same things that we as councillors have seen that are a concern. Not the searching of public Facebook pages, because they're public spaces.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be posting there if you're not prepared to be held accountable for your statements. But it is my expectation that there are some pretty obvious indicators which should ultimately end up in recommendations to council. If, however, those recommendations are not in alignment with the 5 renegades as such, then I imagine we would engage in a conversation with the Mayor directly around how do we find a way to address those concerns. We do work in a bureaucratic organisation, and so it is about process. And if this is not the right process to get us to a good result, then what is? So, but I expect at this stage that it's a very straightforward review. Is there a problem? Isn't there a problem? If there is, these are the recommendations going forward. If there isn't, thank you for your time. We believe, as the Renegades, there are some indicators there worthy of investigation, but we trust in the process and we trust in the investigator, and we expect that they will find the same thing. If, however, they don't, then I guess we should be looking at ourselves. What did we see? If that's still there, then we push the issue.
Because one of the renegades is actually the Mayor herself.
I heard that rumour, yes.
So, I mean, isn't that a bit of a conflict for her, that if you go to her asking her to sort of take action on something, that she is one of the people who feels the same as you?
A conflict, perhaps. I would like to know that the City of Napier has confidence in the people they elect, and that the people they elect have the freedom to speak their mind. Those are things that I think the Mayor is keen to protect and enhance.
Yeah.
So I expect that the Mayor will be looking for the same results, an opportunity to build a strong team, and whatever those recommendations provide for us, we'll be looking for ways to put some effort into restoring those relationships.
Yeah, now there was a request for a second review as well into the culture of the organisation, but the decision was made to let the new council decide whether to go ahead with that. Will you be pushing for that? Because you've said that there needs to be a focus on management to ensure there's a culture change. Yeah,
absolutely. So I was one of the ones that specifically asked for us to have a look at the culture of Napier City. The fact that our staff are following through on directives, again the Facebook scenario, the fact that our staff are following through on directives and checking public statements is fine. But if there are comments made in those emails which are condoned or not even challenged, then that for me indicates there's a culture there that should be reviewed. And as a Māori and the first Māori on Napier City Council, I can tell you there's lots of rooms for us to strengthen our cultural capacity, not just in Māoridom, but just with one another.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. A lot of these issues stemmed from some councillors not being happy with the $40 or $41 million aquatic centre project being pushed through. Kirsten Wise has said she'll review the project and go back to the people of Napier. You've also suggested that there probably wasn't proper consultation, but surely it's been through a democratic process already, and we should just go ahead with it.
I do understand that point. And if we're talking about democratic processes, then for me, I see two. There's the democratic process that we as councillors engage in, and then there's the democratic process that citizens engage in. So the democratic process for our citizens and our residents was very different to the process for us as councillors. And while the vote at the council was a narrow margin and a narrow decision that led to Prebenston site being given favour by council, this was not the voice or the opinion that I was hearing from our city. So where there's a misalignment and where there's such a close decision in votes, my own leadership style, to me that says there's an indicator we need to discuss this further. I wouldn't want to commit our city to such a large expense on such a narrow margin. If that just means having more conversations in order to strengthen that margin or reduce that margin, that's a better indicator than a 1% difference in a poll. And the fact that it was out of alignment with the conversations happening within our community was further concern for me. So I'm more interested in spending some time in articulating very clearly what is the expectations of our residency, of our vote payers and our rate payers, and whatever that position is, that's the position I'll support. At the moment, my community, the Nelson Park Ward, have told us very clearly the pool should be at Onikawa, and for a whole range of reasons. And I've been saying that since the LTP, and I'll continue saying it until my community says, okay, we've shifted our position on the matter.
Yeah, so you're not anti a pool, you're just anti where it is and the process to decide on where it should be.
I still remain unconvinced that as a councillor that there is greater value in moving to the Prebenston Drive site in comparison to reinvesting in the Onikawa site.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, one could argue, yes, we're looking at potentially some dated equipment and you're just putting a new plaster on some parts. But actually there's far more to this decision than just cost. If we have a look at when I entered into term 3 years ago, velodrome was the word of the day. Since then, Sir Avery has built himself a fantastic sporting complex over in Hastings. And we as a council have had decisions around we need a united sporting strategy for Hawke's Bay, because at the moment every council's sort of doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, it's about when we hear these proposals around these big projects, it's always at the front of these proposals and business cases is the well-being of the city, that we need to activate the health and community. We need to provide them with abilities to rehabilitate, to engage, to reduce their blood pressure, to increase their well-being. So these are always at the forefront of every project. And to my surprise, they were also mentioned at the front of the Onikawa project. Yet we're talking about moving to a Prebenston Drive site, which is 3.5 kilometres further away from the Eastern Districts, which has the highest number of these health-related issues. So if you've already got a high population with health-related issues and you're going to move the primary facility to help drive a whole lot of programs to an area that is 3.5 kilometres further away with a population that actually walks or catches a public bus most of the time, then you are in effect putting more barriers in front of people who need that service more. And you're putting it right in the heart of those that have a $240,000 empty section, so you can guarantee they've probably got a car to drive from home to the pool. That's not necessarily always true of our east coast and our eastern suburbs. A lot are single income families trying to get by, and they might have 3 cars, but only one of them will have a warrant but no rego. And while that's a generalisation, it's nonetheless true. We are struggling to meet our needs on a day-to-day basis as a community because Hawke's Bay has to go through some significant innovative change to meet the future and the demands that are coming.
Well, I'm sure this won't be the last we hear about the pool saga, so we'll watch that with interest. Now, another touchy subject for the people of Napier is water, and it's a big deal for the whole of Hawke's Bay, actually. And what are you doing as a councillor to secure Napier's drinking water?
The plan we got going forward, so over the last 3 years when I first walked in, that was the first number one priority that was put before us as councillors as we were dealing with or putting together with staff the vision for the city. Water was number one priority. We were still waiting on the Havelock North inquiry at that stage. Our staff were proactive. They were forward-thinking. They wanted to meet these new standards before we became obliged to force our systems into the new standards. And I commend them for that. They were responding to a knee-jerk reaction from central government, which is now being filtered out into our local communities. And Napier City, who were once proud aquifer-fed population, are now a less than happy aquifer-fed population that has got chlorine and other contents in their water. So what are we doing as a council? We already know about the $26 to $28 million that our staff have prioritised in the LTP around water solutions. But ultimately, for me, we as a city will need to sit down and have a conversation with ourselves and determine what is the value that we put on water as a community. If we determine that clean, healthy water is our priority, then that should translate to the level of commitment we as ratepayers will want to pay, because it will be a costly option. I'm still keen to push with the Mayor and others around the removal of chlorine. What I'm after is clean, safe water, healthy water, but the law requires that we provide safe water, and those are two very different things in my opinion.
So can you see a time when water is chlorine-free?
I am both a realist and an optimist. I don't know how those two work together. The realist in me asks the Ministry of Health and central government, where is the focus from our central leaders around the removal of these elements in our drinking water supply? To my discouragement, there was no such conversation happening at central government. So if Napier City seeks to get chlorine out of their water, it will be a Napier City solution only. It won't be supported as such, there are no indicators, from central government. There are risk and liability and insurance, and those are the things that drive many. If it is a decision for us to go to clean water, then once our city makes that decision, then I'll push at the table to see that that's planned for. I would love to see us return to a clean, healthy water environment. I understand the need for chlorine in some situations. I'm not entirely confident that Napier fits that situation completely. And I think we should have a conversation around what it would take to return to a clean, healthy water supply for Napier City. And that won't be a short conversation.
Well, we almost coming to the end. We've got a few minutes left, but that's gone very quickly.
Yes.
You mentioned and you campaigned that you want to see the people of your ward and the city lead healthy, happy and fulfilling lives. That's a big ask, and is that your role as a councillor, or is that more working with central government? How do you plan to do that?
I hold the opinion that to achieve those sorts of aspirational outcomes, it's actually an individual choice. I can bleat and moan that central government are not doing enough. I can bleat and moan that local government's not doing enough. But if I walk past rubbish on the side of the road, or I see an elderly person struggling with an issue, or I see someone in need and I choose to walk past that, then really the change has to happen with me. To achieve the types of aspirational outcomes for my communities that I represent, I need us all to have a look at the challenges and us all to participate in the solutions. I believe that if we invest in our families, if we invest in our communities, then we will build vibrant centres within the city, and they contribute towards a vibrant city. At the moment, especially within my ward, there are a large number of people that don't know what vibrancy is. They don't know how to achieve their aspirations, because living in the day-to-day is actually a genuine, painful struggle for them. So in order to achieve those wonderful, aspirational, warm statements that I've made, it really comes down to how we work on an individual basis within our communities. Because if we don't empower and enable our communities, then we have no resilience and connectivity. And without those, we wander loose, we wander free, or we wander without purpose. Yeah. So So to achieve those big, warm, fuzzy statements, I need to work hard at the coalface with our people, because that's really where the damage is and where the healing has to begin.
Now, you're very involved in your community apart from being a councillor, and that. What is the one wish for Napier that you want? You've mentioned some of the things, but if you could put it in one sentence, what would it be?
In one sentence, I would like to suggest to Napier that we learn our history, we celebrate our past and what we've learned, and we work together to build the future that we need.
Api Tapine, thank you so much for your time today, and all the best for the future.
Thank you, Andrew. Ngā mihi nunu ki a koe.
And to the listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.